they say network equals net worth, this is where it originated for me. And I'm extremely grateful for him and Candace both in the impact they've had on my life personally. David is a friend, but he's also a mentor. He's somebody I can call or text if I need some encouragement or a good kick in the butt probably as well. He's helped me avoid some mistakes and blind spots along the way. You probably don't even know that. But I'm very grateful for him and Candace, and I just want you guys to give them a big round of applause today. On your feet, please.
Stay up here for a second. Stay up here. Thank you. Well, stay up here for a second. Let me ask you a question, Jim.
All right.
You just talked about having a tribe of 290,000, going on 300,000 people in the Facebook group.
Yeah.
You've been doing this event like
10 years.
10 years. That's what I thought, because we did the one in Dallas and then we started doing this. So let me ask you a question. Why do you do this? Why do you do this?
It's not for financial reasons. I can promise you
I
that.
understand.
I've had to really wrestle with this, actually, Cheryl and I both. And I do it because of you. Because I've seen people become first-generation millionaires and then go on to become multimillionaires. Not everybody does it. It's not a get-rich-quick thing. And it's really more about the person you become than the financial riches that may occur. For me.
Well, when so I look around the room, of course, I see, Mary Hart and Jeff Watson, Bill Cook, and Tom Berry. Well, Tom's wandering around somewhere. But, it gets to a point where it's not about the money. And I know if you're a young person, you're thinking, well, it's all about the money. And when you're young, it is. When you're trying to put food on the table, it is about the money, because you have to make money, you have to trade time for dollars, and you learn to build Plan B wealth, is what I call it. Real estate, my favorite asset class. But you get to a point where, and who was it, the conversation that you had last night, who said, how much is enough? Who was the one? Yeah, the conversation, how much is enough?
That's a
really good question, because I have that same conversation with other people who, again, you'd look at in life and say, well, they're very successful, right? They live in a nice place, they drive nice cars, they have a nice family life, they take vacations, but how much is enough? And it's not about how much is enough. My good friend, Dr. Steve Johnson, we were just talking this morning, Stephen Penny and Andrew, back again, probably, 10 years thereabouts, met them many years ago at a seminar. And we were talking about the same thing. Like, Steve's like, you call like the epitome of the decathlon dentist. I come from dentistry, so I can speak this way because I know. He is top shelf, humble, humility, but he is like the guy you'd want to get together with and be mentored by, because he could take a young doc and get them up to like a high level doc very, very quickly. And he does that. He does that today. He doesn't need to do it for the money. And I'm not speaking because I know about his finances. I just know they don't need to do what they do for the money. But you do it because you get to a point in life where you want to give back. Right, Leon? I mean, if you've gone down enough pathways in life and you've taken the switchbacks and the setbacks, and it's like, how can I make that easier for someone else? I'm not about being negative about the world and what we live in. It's changing. It's massively changing. We can say that for sure. It's changing. Does that mean it's going to be more difficult, easier? No, it's going to be a different pathway we've got to take, right, Wendy? Wendy, another one who just mentors so many people. You did a great job with that. So helping other people, get a step up, right? And I think young people today who are not in this room, I'm just going to keep you up here the whole time. Don't go sit down. You're not done yet. We're not going to do the PowerPoint.
I'm a recovering introvert.
We're just going to have a discussion up here. But helping people, get a leg up, because the traditional model of just go to school, get a job, get in a career, I don't believe is going to set very many people free today. Right, Paul? I mean, that's where we came from, right? And nothing wrong with education. I'm about education, but the right education, right? There's formal education, and then there's real education. To me, the common sense, real practical education comes from a room like this. And that's why being a part of a tribe, you've got to find a tribe, right? You've got to find a tribe. You may have different tribes, but you've got to have a tribe, and that's what you've done here over the last decade, is you've created a tribe here. So let's give Jim a big hand.
Oh, no, come on. No,
see, I can bring it right back to you.
You got me. All right, watch for the paper.
All right, well, it's good the clock's not moving, so my time is going to be forever here this morning, so as long as it doesn't move, I'll just keep talking. Is that okay? No, I think there's some other people that are supposed to.
I don't think you need it.
But, okay, well.
Because I know where you learned to speak.
Well, I brought a lot of stuff this morning, but I was trying to think of the title I wanted to use, and I was going back and forth on what to talk about today. I try to encompass quite a bit into this one, but don't catch the falling knife. Talking about where we are in the economy, what's happening there, the models that we've used to get to where we are today are not going to be the models that take us going forward. Anybody agree? Anybody disagree? It's changing, but it's not bad. All right, let's see if this is, there we go. I'm not going to talk about specific tactics. I saw the schedule yesterday, and I unfortunately couldn't be here yesterday, but I know the speakers that spoke yesterday gave a lot of great tactical strategies, and you'll probably get more today. Tactics are great, but you have to understand why you're using a specific tactic, because not all tactics are equal. Not all tactics are going to take you specifically where you want to go based on where you are in your life, the opportunities you have in front of you. Everybody here is unique and individual. Thank goodness, we're all individual. So figuring out what to do. So I'm going to speak more at a higher level today in terms of concepts. Concepts then beget strategies, then beget the tactics you're going to use. So understanding what tactics you're using has to go back to the concepts. Where are you at? Where are you trying to go? What are your assets? What are your resources? Again, it's different for everybody. And being a part of a group like Jim's group, the inner circle, is where you can have those conversations and really get clarity on who am I uniquely, where do I fit in the cog of commerce today? And that being like real estate, where do I fit? When I was much, much younger, I was a boots on the ground guy. Yes, I did dentistry by day, but during lunchtime and on the weekends and at night, I was a real estate guy. And I went out there, and we didn't have the internet. I couldn't use my smartphone to find deals, so I had to go direct to seller. And so learning how to do that, go to sellers and negotiate terms, which is all coming back, isn't it, Jeff? See, we don't need terms when the banks are lending and you got cheap money, right? It's all cash. It's cash, cash, cash. The market's going up, up, up. It's changing, dramatically changing right now. So, Jim, I was just looking at these pictures from ways back. We used to dress up with coats and ties. I don't know what happened to that. Or we lost the formality. That's probably a good thing. But that's when we were back doing some back in the day here in Richmond. I think that was the Hilton Garden Inn, if I don't remember correctly. There we are hanging out with our wives, and then I could never figure this out, but Jim always got the halo over his head, and I was always trying to be that guy. And Jim deserves it because he is that guy. So that's why I hang out with Jim, because he's the halo guy. This was 2020, Dealmaker 2020. It was actually February. I think it was February 8th to 10th. I think the dates on that. 6th to 8th. If you remember, that was right before COVID. Now, I don't know about Jim's timing, but it was very, very good there, because COVID actually hit. We started shutting down March 16th. So he got in a month ahead, had the great event. And my topic then was the big shift. Well, we had a big shift, didn't we? I did not lie. No, I didn't see COVID coming. But a lot of things have shifted and are continuing to shift. So I think that theme carries on a little bit in terms of where we are. So again, back to don't catch the falling knife. What am I talking about there? When the economy is going through the massive changes right now, you want to be careful that you're not jumping in with too much vigor at the wrong time. Trying to catch that falling knife is very, very dangerous. So my transformation, that really wasn't me, but and that's not Steve Johnson, but Little Shop of Horrors, Steve Martin, y'all familiar? That's what I used to do. And patients said I scared the heck out of them, so I had to get out of dentistry. That's not really how it happened. Not really how it happened. I actually did both in tandem. As I said, I was a dentist, but I also found real estate, and I'll tell you how I did that, and it's from someone that Jim already talked about. How I found real estate and what it did for me. And without any grand plan, without any home runs, real estate set me free from dentistry. We say, well, why did you want to be set free from dentistry? What's wrong with dentistry? Well, there's nothing wrong with dentistry. It's just I have a daughter who, with God's grace, she'll turn 31 years old today, but when she was 2.5 years old, many, many years ago, she was diagnosed with high-risk leukemia. She made it through that. Then she had epileptic seizures, and at age 12, 2004, she was in end-stage liver failure. That was my daughter's first run at life. And then after that, she got a liver transplant, again, by the grace of God, and a family who gave up the organ from the child that they lost in a horrific automobile accident. Organ donation, by the way, is something that you all should consider if you haven't already, because it does save lives for people. Jen had a really hard life, and I realized that doing dentistry, where it was financially, obviously provided the backdrop to provide for my family, it didn't give me the thing I really wanted the most, and that was freedom, time, yeah, having options. Again, I love to work. What I do today, it's not even work. It's when you get to a point in your life where it's just fun and you get up and you don't care what day of the week it is. And I'm not saying that was always the way with dentistry. Dentistry is hard work, isn't it, Steve? It's hard work. And building a business of any kind takes a lot of intentionality. And to overcome that is something that's difficult to do, but the time factor, being scheduled out for 6 months seems like, well, that's a dream. I know you got all that work to do. Well, it is until you need the time. And so I took my opt-out because I had enough. Going back to how much is enough? Well, did I have like multi-millions of dollars and I was living on a yacht? No. But I had enough. Well, how much was enough for me back then? I had enough cash flow from the real estate, all single-family houses that I had built up a portfolio over many, many years, well, 15 years, call it 15 years, basically snowballed down the debt, had enough properties paying free and clear cash flow, and that was enough for me to leave the chair. It was not my end game, not like I was going to just be there forever, but it was enough to set me free to go on to what I would do next. And I had no idea that I would do what I do today, but it gave me the margin, gave me the opportunities to have a different way of life. So that's how that happened. This is my first Freedom Founders meeting. We didn't even call it Freedom Founders back in the day, but that was a bunch of us that were hanging out there at the Hilton Garden Inn. I think that was about 2012, 2011, 2012. That's where it started, where I had a number of dental colleagues, some medical colleagues who said, well, David, I understand why you left dentistry when you did at your age. I was in my 40s, and said, well, that's kind of early, but your daughter was sick, we understand that, but how did you do it? How could you financially do that? And that's when I said, well, I got started in real estate when I was very, very young. And they said, well, could you show me how? I said, well, certainly I could show you what I did, but you're not going to want to do it the way I did it because I was, boots on the ground. I was trying to manage, 2 lives. And I said, that's a great way to start when you're young, but when you're more established in life, you're probably not going to want to do it that way. So bring them together in a group where I brought my real estate friends who were operators and doctors who had capital that they wanted to get out of the stock market and put it into tangible assets. And we created this group that became Freedom Founders where I was the translator. I was the translator and helped them figure out how to put their money together. The private capital markets, and it's the way, in my opinion, the best way to be free in a world today which is becoming much more regulated, and we'll talk a bit more about that as we go along. So this is the book that got me started. Back when I was reading books, you had to go to a library. The thing called a library card. It's like a driver's license. You had a card. You go into this institution. They had books on shelves. And I got this book on how I turned $1,000 into $5 million in real estate, William Nickerson. And it's amazing that the principles that William talked about, this book was written originally, the first edition, like back in the late 50s and 60s. William Nickerson has long passed away. But the concepts in that book, many hold true today. And I read that book and I thought, this just makes a lot of sense. Had never bought any asset, hadn't even invested any money. I was in school. I owed money, right? So, I said, this book makes sense. And I guess it made sense to a guy like me because I like to have control. Right, Jeff? I like a little bit of control in my life. And so I said, real estate, I can have control. Well, control comes with also responsibilities, and it comes with management, and some of the things we don't like, but what you figure out in life is you figure out what you do best, and then you build a team around you for the things that you don't do well. Not easy for a solopreneur who wants to keep control, who thinks we're taught in school that you have to do everything yourself. You have to be the person who makes it all happen. It's hard to let go. But learning that over time, making mistakes over the years, allowed me today to where I am what I'd call the passive investor. I'm passive but semi-active because I like to stay involved in the deals I'm in. We'll talk a little bit about due diligence and how that works today. But I need the people who are the boots on the ground. So how many people are out there making deals, networking with people, making deals? How many people in this room make deals on a regular basis? I'd like to see a show of hands. So you're all my people because I don't do what you do anymore. I like to connect with you. I like to be a part of the deal in some form fashion. Usually that's bringing capital to a deal. Sometimes it's helping to orchestrate a deal. But even then, I don't even do all that. I used to do my own, Jeff Watson will kill me, but I used to do all my own legal work. Well, for small deals, it's okay. But no, I used to. Point being, I wised up and said, well, why am I still doing that, right? It's not bad to understand the legal aspects of what you do, but then it's like when we're putting a deal together and we're putting complicated deals, I just call Jeff, and Jeff will take it home and structure the deal legally with the documentation required to make it a good deal, to make it a sound deal. I know it's a good deal from the economic standpoint that we built, but I want to make sure structurally it's built right. So I don't do my own legal work anymore, Jeff, or Mary Hart, I should tell you the same thing since former practicing lawyer. I don't do my own trusts anymore. I just leave that to the experts. And Jack Miller was the guy that I found very, very early, back in the early 80s, thank goodness, because of the books. Books led me to Jimmy Napier and Pete Fortunato and John Schaub and Jack Miller, and those were the four horsemen that I ran with back in the early 80s. And the big thing that Jack taught me and really said over and over again, he said, David, if you use the banks, the institutions, you're lazy. You're lazy. And he's right. Now, I'm not against people using, the Burr strategy and all that. I get all that. And, it's had its run. All that stuff's been fine in the last 15 years because why? The cost of capital has been like next to zero. So using institutional financing for leverage, yeah, I know it's a leverage game. We always got to leverage, got to arbitrage. That's how you make money. I get it. It's the lazy way. And I'm telling you, that model's over. Okay. Oh, no. Bigger pockets, they say that's the way you do. I'm telling you, everything has its time. What I want to get over to you today, more than anything, is that things are changing. It's not bad. Yeah, that's our guy. Things are changing, but not in a bad way. Actually, this is the greatest opportunity for those of you who are in this game because 99.9% of the people out there, right, Jeff, who have been using the model that got them to where they are today, and I'm not faulting that model if it got them to a certain point, but if you can't change horses right now and understand you've got to learn to change, you've got to hang out with people like Bill, who's teaching, I think you're teaching an options class coming up. I mean, who knows anything about options, right? I mean, how to use options. I mean, one of the strongest leverage aspects in real estate, but who knows how to use options? I mean, these are the things you've got to learn now, and now's your opportunity. So I'm saying keep doing what you're doing, but learn from the people who have been through a full cycle or several full cycles, because that's what you've got to know. Just being a part of one cycle, half cycle that's gone up, almost straight up since coming out of the Great Recession, doesn't mean you know what you're doing. It means you took advantage of the opportunities there, and that's great. But understand, it's changing right now. It's changing dramatically. So this is the first house my first investment property, 1980, interest rate on the house was 13.5. Anybody think you make money on a house at 13.5% interest? Jeff can. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, I know. Leon can. Well, most people today are screaming because rates are at 6.5, right? Well, just double it and try to make some money. So I've been there. I've done that. You can make money at the rate, but you have to be able to negotiate some other aspects of the capital stack to make that happen. Anyway, that was the first house. Bought it in 1980. I was a first-year dental student, and I told my dad, I'm going to be here for 4 years. I think keyword was we, need to buy a house because I had no money, I had no credit. So Dad was my first joint venture partner, and thankfully he trusted me enough to put the financing together, got the financing, and I was in my first no money down deal. Now, you can do no money down deals if you structure them correctly, right? I mean, that's the key. And so I was the manager, and he was the joint venture capital provider. And I'll just fast forward. I managed that property, learned a lot of things about managing, let some SMU students into the house my first go-around. Not a good idea. But I did one thing smart, made the parents co-sign. So when they tore the house up, I got reimbursed. Never again did I rent to those students. That was over. 3.5 years later, sold the property, because I was graduating dental school, and Dad and I split 50-50, about $50,000 in capital gain profit from that house. That was a lot of money for a kid back in 1983, when I'd been waiting tables on the nights and weekends, making good money, but when I realized that this capital asset, this property that we'd held for about 4 years, the amount of money that I made on profit was about 10x what I made working trading time for dollars. That was a clue. Now, that didn't stop me from going on and getting my education and doing dentistry. I wouldn't but I could have, but I didn't. I didn't. Well, I was too deep into it, right? I was still that good boy who's going to get the education and do that. So no regrets, no regrets. But had I given myself permission back then, I could have probably saved a lot of education. Now, there's a lot of people's teeth who would have not been saved because I wasn't there to save them, so I have to remember that part. Just kidding, someone else would have taken care of them. But. Okay, so that was the house. Freedom Founders, yep, that was on the left is the first meeting that we did back in like 2011, 2012. Very sketchy group there, and then we upgraded a little bit. No, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to have a group, a tribe, and I do it as much for me as I do it for the people we serve. Why? Because, well, I want to stay in the game of real estate. I enjoy real estate, and I enjoy doing it with different people in different arenas where I can invest capital through Wendy and Bill Fairman, and I can do it with Tom Berry and other people that I know, like, and trust. And when you're building an estate early on, working smaller amounts of money, structuring creative finance is the way to do it. It is the way to do it all day long. As you build up more capital over time, then it's harder to get it out into individual deals. Well, you can, but it's a lot of work. So where I still like to be in the art of the deal, do it with other people, sometimes you just got to put capital with good people who can run with it for you, right? And so in my life today, it's kind of a balance. Probably heavier on the passive side, but still keeping some deal flow on what I call private transactions. And so there's a balance, and as you evolve in life, you'll find the same thing. So wherever you are, just understand there's an evolution that you'll go through. What's next? Okay, so 1964, Bob Dylan album, The Times They Are Changing. We are definitely there, and that was 64, so where we are today, 2023, so 60 years later, the times they are changing in a big, big way, not just small changes. Just talking about the Federal Reserve and what we're doing to kick the can down the road, we're stealing from the generations to come, and that hurts my heart to see what we, as a country, are literally stealing from our generations, our kids, our grandkids, your nieces, nephews. That's why I think it's so important that we do all we can to give back to that generation from the standpoint that we can and teach them how to navigate what they're going to have to navigate. I'm in some ways glad I'm not starting over at age 20 today in this environment. I see a lot of people saying the same thing. Okay, then what do we do to help those kids because they didn't have a choice, right? They came to this world because that was their time to come to this world. Again, I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm not being negative about the world, what we have. There's tons of opportunities. It's just not going to be the same. And too many people, parents, teachers, professors, just don't have a clue. Don't have a clue as to what's happening in this world, and they just keep teaching the same models, and the indoctrination is awful. Charlie Munger. I'm going to play a little clip from Charlie just to give a little context.
We've done something pretty extreme, and we don't know how bad the troubles will be, or whether we're going to be like Japan or something a lot worse. And what makes life interesting is we don't know how it's going to work out. I think we do know we're flirting with serious trouble. Think of how seductive it is. You have a bunch of interest-bearing debts, and you pay them off with checking accounts, which you're no longer paying interest. Think of how seductive that is for a bunch of legislators. You get rid of the interest payments, and the money supply goes up. It seems like heaven. And of course, when things get that seductive, they're likely to be overused. All this stuff is dangerous and serious, and we don't want to have a bunch of politicians just doing whatever is easy on the theory that it didn't hurt us last time, so we can double it and do it one more time, and then we double it again and so forth. We know what happens on that everlasting doubling. You will have a very different government if you keep doing that enough. You're flirting with danger somewhere. Inflation is a very serious subject. You can argue it's the way democracies die. When democracy dies in Latin America, inflation is a big part of it. So it's a huge danger once you've got a populace that learns it can vote itself money. If you overdo it too much, you ruin your civilization a lot. Of course, it's a big long-range danger. If you look at the Roman Republic, even after they went to an empire with an absolute ruler, they inflated the currency steadily for hundreds of years. And eventually, the whole damn Roman Empire collapsed. So it's the biggest long-range danger we have, probably, apart from nuclear war.
A lot of truth there, a lot of wisdom in a short clip there. And Charlie Munger is 99 years old. They just had their annual Berkshire meeting just this past week. Warren Buffett's 92. Those guys, many people laugh at them and say, well, they're out of it. No, look, they've seen many, many cycles. I take their conceptual wisdom. Now, they don't do real estate. That's not their game. But look at what they understand about the economy and the market. That's what you want to take away from people like that. is understand that they've seen it from a high level. And I've got another clip that I'll play towards the end that Charlie also did, but there's a lot of wisdom what comes from gentlemen like that. Oak Tree Capital, Howard Marks. Anybody familiar with Howard Marks? All right, I got a little clip from Howard Marks. Howard's going to talk, I'm not going to play the whole clip, but he's going to talk about what he calls a sea change, S-E-A, sea change. He's talking about a secular cycle. So we have business cycles that run like every 6 to 8 years on average. Now this last cycle coming out of the Great Financial Recession has been kicked further down the road. COVID a big part of that. So we've gone on, call it 14 years until we started seeing the headwinds start to hit last year. Typically every 6 to 8 years we have a business cycle. They can be various ranges of that. But a secular cycle is like 40 years. So within a secular cycle, you're going to have business cycles during that time. Got it? Then beyond a secular cycle, there's what's called a seculum, and that's like 80 to 100 years. A bigger picture, I'll talk to you about that at the end. So while we're always looking at the business cycles, well, are we in a recession? How long is this recession going to take? Is the Fed going to pivot and start pumping money back in the system? I mean, everybody's got an opinion, right? You could look at that, but you also have to look at the longer cycle, and I think the longer cycle is interesting, so I'm going to let Howard speak a little bit about that.
Howard, welcome. Fresh off that memo everyone's talking about.
Thank you, Sarah. It's nice to be here.
It's good to have you, and happy holidays. So let's start with the sea change. That was the big headline from your report. It's how you kicked off your memo. You said 53 years in your investing career, there have been 3 sea changes, and we are in one of them. What does that mean?
Well, a sea change is a major transformation of the environment, a complete change in attitudes, etc. And I suspect that we may be at the beginning of one. The first one was the fall of interest rates from 20 to 0 between 1980 and 2020, which had very, very positive effects. The second was the opening of investors' minds to what we call risk-return analysis. And before the 70s, the job of the investor was to avoid risk. After the 70s, it was to intelligently take risk, and that was a big change. And I think that we may be on the doorstep of the third.
So what is this sea change?
Well, since
Since
the Fed, central banks around the world, and the Treasury took strong action to solve the global financial crisis in 08, 09, we have been living in a highly stimulated, very positive, easy money environment for roughly 14 years.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there. So what he's talking about is the last 40 years in the secular period. That's, by the way, 1980, when I bought my first investment property. So just timing is everything, right? But what he's saying is interest rates then, because Paul Volcker came in to do what? To try to annihilate inflation, which he did, took 2 successive recessions back to back. Interest rates, Fed funds rate went to 20% to do that. So he crushed inflation and crushed the economy for about several years there. I was right in the middle. I had no clue. Sometimes it's just good to be naive. It's just ignorant about the world. I turn off all the news and just go out there and do business. I had no clue, and yet I still made it, right? Somehow I'm still here. But during that time, very, very volatile, very period of time, and I didn't really know I was in the middle of it. So interest rates up here, you got 40 years where interest rates basically doing this. What he's saying is that's been a major tailwind to any of us in any sector of what we've been doing in life, if you've been an adult since then. So what I'm saying to you, all the, quote, success I've had, yes, it takes hard work, not taking away from any of the hard work that we have to do, but it's been like a gold mine, unless you were just like ignorant, not doing anything at all. So I can't look at myself and go, oh, look at me, I just did so well. No, it had a lot of tailwinds behind it. That was one factor. Then he said the other piece is going back, and I wasn't an investor in the 70s. I was still, in high school in the 70s. But he said investors started looking at risk and taking risk. Back before then, it was like you were very conservative as investors. You played really, leverage, arbitrage, equity markets, private equity. No, none of that. It was all conservative because you could get decent returns back then. Back then you could get 8, 9, 10%. And in the early 80s, many markets at 17%. Well, you didn't have to take a lot of risk back then. And then the third one he mentioned is what happened with COVID and the pandemic. The shutdown and the subsequent massive stimulus, the helicopter money that was just spewed out everywhere the way the government does things. And again, I'm not saying they didn't need to do something, but of course the government never does anything efficiently. So you get the excesses of what they do. And yes, now they've created this mindset that I'm looking at the financial markets is still saying, they'll come back and do it again. There's no end to this. We can keep borrowing forever. We have the global reserve currency. Well, for how long? For how long? It's not going to change tomorrow. It's not going to change the next couple of years. But I'm just saying, what I'm saying to you and for the young people, again, I'm not trying to scare you, frighten you. We have lived in this last 40 years in a really beneficial generation in so many ways. And I don't want to go down the cultural rabbit hole, but we've seen a lot of cultural changes too. So the world in this country is changing massively, and to stay on the forefront of it, you've got to be plugged in. You've got to be with a tribe of people who can help us maintain the level of autonomy and personal sovereignty that we want. I just put this back up here just again to show you the basic business cycles, but realize within the secular 40-year period and the 80 to 100-year period these business cycles run, these bigger waves are the ones that you need to look at, in my opinion, to see, really understand what's going on. As he said, 40 years of declining interest rates from 1980 down to basically zero in 2020. Now we're on the uptick. We're not going to go back. We can't go back. We're not going to go back as high as we did back then. No, that's not going to happen. But where are we going to land? We're not going to go back to zero interest rates. I can just pretty well bet on that. The Fed has a problem. Jay Powell does not want to be the Arthur Burns, who was a Fed chair back in the 70s, who let inflation get out of the bag. That's why Volcker had to come in and knock it down in 80. They didn't understand. So Powell's trying to be like, I'm going to be like a Volcker. So his mandate is like, I'm going to beat inflation down, and I'm not going to go back and save the financial markets. Now, the Fed has always gone back to save the financial markets in recessions in the past, in the last 40 years. They come in and just pump it up. 2008, no difference. They quadrupled that coming out of the COVID pandemic. So now you have trillions of dollars of fiat, fake money pumped in the system. Well, you think you're going to have a little inflation? Add to that the supply chain issues with deglobalization. So now we have to onshore manufacturing. So inflation's here to stay, folks. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to stay at the CPI level of 9% like we had last year, but I can probably tell you it's going to float. It's going to float probably 4, 5, 6%. It's going to be floating, and we're going to have this tug of war, I believe, going forward, where the Fed's going to be trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat. They can't pull any more rabbits out of the hat. I think the day's over. So there's going to be this fluctuation. So the dynamics, again, of having a relatively stable market with low interest rates, wide open credit like we've had for the last 15 years, those days are over. So learn a different model. Start thinking differently now and get ahead of all the people out there who, unfortunately, are going to be laying by the side of the road, figuratively, and not understanding what happened. Money figuratively running uphill for the last 40 years. That's what we've had. Now, yes, you have to get out there and do the work. I'm not taking that away from anybody here. You have to do the work. You have to be involved. But we've had the tailwinds behind us. It's going to be different. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's what we've had. On the other side, as Warren says, when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. Let's take a look at here. Oh, it didn't play. Let's see. Danger, Will Robinson. I guess I need to go back. Hello. Let's try it one more time. Well, I'll just talk about this one. 2 young kids, it's TikTok, and they're talking about, hey, we just figured out this private lending deal so we can get private capital and we can do a deal and then we can refinance. But you know what? We learned that if you do it once, you can scale it up and do a lot more, right? So the more the merrier. And I don't know where these kids are today, but what I'm saying is when you scale a model that doesn't have good constructs to it, it eventually runs out and blows up. So that was those kids. This is another one that's interesting. I guess it's not going to play either. So this was another one where these young guys were hanging around the tiki hut, and they were going, like, I got $40 billion, under management. Yeah. Well, it's debt, yeah, but they're saying they own, and they don't talk about the debt. So they were going around the teacup and they were bragging and going, boom, boom, and I'm just thinking, yeah, the big boom is going to happen pretty soon. So again, all of the people out there shouting from the rooftops, I'm all this, I'm all that, but as Jeff said, they don't talk about, how much debt is underlying these assets that they claim to have. So young people, don't let that make you feel like you're not enough. You're good. You don't need to run that direction. Yeah, going back to 60, 65, 66, I'm taking a lot of you back, right? Some of you young people are going, what the heck are you talking about, Phelps? Danger, Will Robinson, just Google it, Lost in Space. It's a great show. I loved it. That's a great show. So there's some danger. This quote from Lenin, not John Lennon, but this is Vlad Lenin, so two different people. I love this quote, though. It's so true. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. We're there right now, folks. We're there right now. That's what I want you to be aware of. Oh, Vlad, he knew a few things. The fastest rate of change of interest rate rising in history. Fastest rate of change from essentially 0 a year ago to over 5%. Massive change. We've never seen that before. The lag effect of raising those interest rates carries on for months and months and months. So it's like the Fed is trying to steer the Titanic through the Panama Canal by doing this. Whoa! And this is the way they run. They're always running, looking in the rearview mirror, aren't they, Jeff? Always in the rear. Everything is like, they never look forward. It's just what's happened in the past. They use all lagging indicators. It's a tough job. I wouldn't want to be the guy, Powell, doing that. But I'm just saying, what a nightmare mess, and it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better because we don't have any kind of a mandate in this country for controlling spending. There's really only three ways to deal with the amount of debt this country has today. Unfunded liabilities that are over 100 trillion, but just the national debt's approaching 32 trillion. There's only three ways to do it. One is default, and I guess we're thinking about that coming up in June. We have the debt ceiling, so maybe we're going to actually go take the default mode. I don't think so, but I mean that's one way you just default.
It's another game of chipping.
It is always right.
How many times have we seen this?
It happens over and over. No, they'll pass it, but it's always this gamesmanship. They'll pass it. They'll extend the debt more. Like it's just fire up the printing presses. It's all free. No problem. Or you can go into austerity mode, which is like tax the heck out of us. Well, they're going to do that anyway to some level. I mean, taxes are going up and up and up. Anybody who has any assets, you're a target in so many different ways. And I couldn't even talk about all the schemes people use to try to get off taxes, but it's coming. And the third way, which is the most politically viable, is inflate, debase the currency. And I think that's what we're going to see. So it's interesting. We have a disinflationary period right now. Assets in general are on the downtick. Why? Because of the cost of capital. You raise the cost of capital, asset values are going to come down. You're going to see in the stock market, it's coming. It's coming. We saw some last year. It's coming. We're seeing it in different real estate asset classes. Just understand this is part of this cycle. The asset values are coming down, but we still have a CPI. Consumers, what we pay for at the store, our utilities for our homes, and for the food we buy, that's still very, very high. So we have two things that are happening at the same time. We still have heavy inflation on the consumer standpoint. We have disinflation on the asset standpoint. The long-term trend, going back to like the secular trend, is going to be we're going to have inflation at some level running forward. We're not going to be back to that Fed goal of 2%. Days are over. That's it. We're done. We're done. It's not going to come back. So you've got to keep things in mind. Again, how you strategically position yourself today against what's happening, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is the things you have to think about. And again, I don't have time to go into all the things I would do, but I'm just giving you some thoughts so when you have your inner circle meetings, these are the things you're talking about. I got to do things today, but also I have to look a little bit longer term. Today, yes, longer term. So how are you balancing those two out? I just mentioned the higher cost of capital decreases valuations. That's just a given. Inflation is transitory. I'm just going back to poor Powell. They were trying to play the game. They're like, don't worry about it. It's all good. We got it covered. And then, of course, they have to reverse course very, very quickly. Here's the Fed since 2020. March 2020, inflation won't be a problem. That was the statement from the Fed. In January 2021, well, inflation's transitory. September that year, interest rates won't rise until 2024. Well, they kind of missed that one. January of last year, recession is needed to lower inflation, so we've got to have a recession now. And then December of last year, disinflation has begun. Well, we know that. And then February this year, a soft landing is still possible. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. We'll see how that pans out. It's not going to be pretty, I have a feeling. And then Yellen, and she just looked behind her, the answer's right there. I'm not promoting Bitcoin, I'm just saying, but she might want to try a different strategy than what she's been using. I thought it was kind of good. So the power of playing the long game. What low cost of capital incentivizes is traders, flippers. Now, I'm not against flipping property. I'm not against that at all. But the game's changing, and I think what I'm seeing today more than ever with a lot of the people I know that have some serious platforms in real estate, syndicators, for example, they're realizing that the flipping days have come to an end. You have to be more of a, I'll talk about that one in a minute. Let's go over here. Operational efficiency. What do I mean by that? Actually managing a portfolio, whatever it is, for profit. For profit. No profit today. I mean, cash flow. Cash flow. See, a lot of syndicators got in this mode of where all I have to do is grab the property, debt's cheap, no problem. We'll put some lipstick on it, let inflation in the marketplace push the rents up, get the NOI up, and we'll flip it out in 18, 24 months to the next buyer, okay? That's been the game, okay? And it's worked, but that game has run out. And now you're gonna see the headwinds of a lot of syndicators who got in the game late, never saw a full cycle, and they're gonna be, well, they are in trouble right now. I know a number of them that are in trouble right now. And I believe, Jeff, you can say differently, I believe we're in the first inning. I believe we're in the first inning of this. I think there's gonna be, so this, I believe this has a long way to run. So if you're not tied up in any of that, your opportunities are coming. And that's where the opportunities to negotiate direct with sellers, with banks, I mean, that's all coming back. Let's flip back to, so this is Chris Clothier. Love the Clothiers, good folks. And I could play this video, but let's not play it. I'm just gonna say, at the bottom, you can't see it, but, well, maybe you can. Why focusing solely on cash flow may not be the best strategy. All right, now, again, I'm not saying anything negative about Chris, so don't go back and say, Chris, David talked about you badly. No, they're a very good company, but here's the problem. Like everybody else, and they sell turnkeys across the country and they manage them, right? At a high level. The problem is, with the valuations that have gone up because of all the stimulus money that pushed valuations up, and now that we have higher cost of capital, leveraging the basic turnkey today doesn't produce any cash flow. Doesn't produce any cash flow. So what Chris is having to do, which a lot of people do now, is they're trying to change the verbiage. It's okay not to have cash flow. We're in an appreciation game. You just need to lock in, what they call it, marry the asset, date the rate. I mean, come on. I mean, I'm sorry. But this is the stuff you're gonna hear out there from people who have built a model that's worked well in the last 15 years, but it's not working right now. Instead of changing the model or looking ahead, they're trying to stick with the old model and try to keep some of us, buying into it. So just beware that you're gonna see a lot of this kind of thing. Again, I'm not saying anything negative about Chris because they are a good company, but their model is hitting headwinds. They're not gonna have the kind of capital influx that they've had in the past. It's just a fact. So understand it, get lean and mean, or change your model. I mean, that's essentially what people have to do there. All right, we talked about that. Let's see if this one will play. So this goes back to operational efficiency. So how many are fans of the Dallas Cowboys? Come on, Dallas Cowboys. Oh, come on, what? America's team. I mean, we haven't been to a playoff game since for 30 years, but we're still America's team. It's all about branding. It's all about, is that working okay? Okay. It's all about the branding and the marketing. So, but this is a good story. I hope it plays. So back in '95, Jimmy Johnson was the coach after Tom Landry was ousted by the current owner, Jones. Jimmy Johnson came in and they were going out to play the 49ers at Candlestick Park, old Candlestick Park, which was basically, used for for baseball. And so it was just, a sod field. And it had been raining a lot. And so Cowboys fly out there. They're going to play 49ers on home turf, but it's soggy turf, right? And this is Emmitt Smith talking about how he saw Jimmy Johnson do something that a lot of people haven't been doing because it's just been easy street. Let's see if we get this to play.
He was so detail-oriented. When we played the San Francisco 49ers in 92, 93 in the NFC Championship game out there in San Fran, you remember how wet it was.
Mm-hmm.
And how George Tomer had to come out and fix the football field. Jimmy was so in tune with everything. He went out early and walked the field. He walked the field and then came back and told Mike McCoy, change their cleats.
Wow.
Take them to longer spikes. And went to Norv Turner and told Norv Turner, if you're going to run the 5 route or any comeback route to Michael or to Alvin or any of our wide receivers, make sure you run it on this side of the field. It has the solid footing and grass on this side of the field. The other side is a little bit damp. If you're going to toss Emmitt the sweep and do these things and you want him to make cuts, make sure he cuts it on this side of the field.
Jimmy Johnson, the head coach, he has all kinds of people around him, right, that could have gone out. He got out and walked the field early that morning before that game to know exactly what that footing was going to be like, and went back and said, change the cleats, run plays this way over here. See, too many people, when they have success, don't do that, become complacent. He could have been very complacent. That's not Jimmy Johnson. He's always been that way. But what I'm saying is too many operators have become complacent. And they've been betting on what they've known to carry the weight. And it has. The market's carried the weight. Jeff Watson and I are dealing with some operators. They will not be named because they're not bad people, but they got complacent. And they sat around on assets that should have been turned 2 years ago, and they sat around and just thought, well, the market will carry us. Now they're in trouble and having to fight the headwinds that are on them now. This is why I'm saying this is where it's going to be, folks, is the diligence. The money's not running uphill anymore. It's running, it's there, but you're going to have to go out and intentionally help it. It's not going to be magic anymore. All right, this is just a bunch of stuff. You can take a picture if you want to, but I could do 3 slides, but here's the risks I see real quickly. The Fed, Powell, is remaining very hawkish on inflation, which means he's probably not going to pivot this year. A lot of people are betting he's going to pivot, drop interest rates back down, start up QE again. He's holding out to, quote, crush inflation at the expense of the economy. Now, we'll see. It's a political game, but we'll see. Inflation is sticky. As I said, inflation is not going to go away. They're going to have to fight this, I think, forever. The interest rates and the economic lag effect. So interest rates, just got popped up one more time last week at the Fed meeting. Will they do it in June? I don't know. But the point is there's a lag effect. And so even in the last 6 months, the rates have gone up. We haven't seen the effect of that yet. It is still coming, folks. It's still coming. The banking crisis. So we'll talk a little bit about that. What this means is liquidity is being sucked out of the market. The banks, as you well know, are in crisis, particularly the regional and the community banks. Well, why? Well, for one, the liquidity is coming out of the marketplace, and secondly, they don't pay anything on their demand deposits. So I can go to Treasury Direct and get 5.5% today with a click of a mouse. Why am I going to leave money in the local bank? And I can pop it back in there, 30-day, 90-day. The banks don't have liquidity. The commercial loans, real estate loans, the bulk of them are made by regional and community banks. Even without the liquidity, they've been tightening their lending standards, as many of you know. So without credit, real estate's not going to be rolling like it was. So you've got to be creative in your structures. You can make a lot of money because other people who haven't changed their model don't know what to do. They're going to be upside down. The opportunities are coming, but you can't rely on the banks. If your model relies heavily on the banks right now, if you haven't already, start changing your model, start accessing different capital, maybe sell some assets to get more liquid, because when it tightens, it's going to tighten hard. And that's what causes a deep recession to happen. So just beware that that's coming. Insurance company balance sheets. Oh, they're in trouble too. By the way, they make a lot of commercial real estate loans. No one's talking about the insurance companies. Big trouble, big trouble. Commercial real estate debt that has to turn over. So that's short-term maturities. This year, next year, 2025, over $1.5 trillion has to be refinanced. How's that going to work out when we have higher interest rates, lower valuations, and banks that aren't going to lend money because they don't have any money? Yeah, see, I'm just portraying what's going to happen. The covenant risks, which Jeff can talk about, but even if you're making your payments, if there's something upside down at your assets, your balance sheets, they can call the loan. Do you think the banks want to leave money out at 3.5%, 4% right now? No, they're losing. They'd love to get that money back in. And if you've got the balance sheet to get it, they're going to come knocking on your door. That's how it works, right? It's not the deadbeats. It's you, the better risk that are going to come because they need the capital. Of course, mentioned this, the U.S. sovereign debt, corporate debt, zombie companies, corporate bankruptcies are at all-time high right now. Pension risk. Pensions have gotten involved in a lot of the shenanigans in trying to get the yields they need to pay their pensioners. Big problems, and that's mostly state because, of course, with the government, the federal government, we're the backstop. So the taxpayers, we're the backstop for that. They'll just come to us for the more money there. Household debt, all-time high right now. The COVID stimulus money, all that trillions of dollars, it's going to run out. It's finally running out. There's been so much liquidity in the marketplace, it's kept things up, but that money's going to run out. Understand that everything that's kept things pumped up, that money is running out. Student loan payments resume in August. Did you know that? Yeah, they've been off the hook for how many months, years? What's going to happen there to these kids who were out, having fun and I got to start paying my loans again? Is that going to cause any problem in the economy, you think? Geopolitical hotspots, those are always the wild cards, and we've got plenty of those in the world right now, so that could change things. Energy, the war against fossil fuels. I'm not going to go deep there right now, but to have an expanding economy, to have growth, you have to have cheap energy. This country, I'm not against, quote, alternatives. I'm not against green energy, but just to try to slam fossil fuels, big mistake. And so that's why I see the future, probably at least the next decade, very tepid growth in this country, unfortunately. And this country should be rocking and rolling, but very tepid growth. So all the big valuation upticks, that's why I say you've got to go back to operational efficiency. It's going to be more of a buy and hold mentality. So when you lock in, whether you're the operator or you're the investor, you're going to have to run with operational efficiency. You're going to win with that, but again, back to Jimmy Johnson, are you running with people or are you the kind of people who will walk the field? This is where it's going to be at. Flipping, making the high profits, not going to be there. Baby boomers, that's me. Not looking too hot here on a retirement basis. Not looking too hot if you just look at those stats. That's a problem. That's a problem. Because as baby boomers roll off of being a value add to the economy, producing, they're on the take side now. Social Security, Medicare, drawing down whatever retirement funds they have, start sucking out of the economy. The baby boomer generation, Stephen Penny Johnson, us, right? We're the ones that fueled a lot of the great things that happened in the last 40 years because we're out there building, right? And having kids and building families. Like, now we're on the other side of that. So that's not a good trend. Household debt, I mentioned, is at all-time highs. Again, it shows a percentage who have more credit card debt than the amount in their emergency fund or savings. All the generations there, if you can read that. But again, it's upside down. We've gotten used to this. With low cost of capital, you could pull this off. What do credit cards run today? Like 22%? I don't know. They're high, right? And that debt's at all-time high. How does that work? It doesn't. It doesn't. It's all about affordability. This country is built on how much is the monthly payment and can I afford it? So housing is the same way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about housing. I like housing because to me it's always been the most resilient asset in my portfolio. Whether I'm the operator or I'm investing through other people, it's the most resilient. It's very local, as we all know. So when we speak nationally, we have to go back to local. You know your local market better than anybody else. So you got to take what the media says with a grain of salt. Some people say, well, real estate's crashing, and other people say, oh, it's all good, it's all good. It's all local. It's all local. So know your local market, of course. But the affordability factor is what will hold prices, valuations from continuing up, and actually is what's bringing them down now, because with the higher cost of capital, interest rates, people can't afford the house today that they could afford 2 years ago with lower interest rates. So it has to bring valuations down. We're looking at a recession where people are going to be getting laid off more and more, so that's going to hurt the economy. So you just have to be prepared for lower valuations. Now, if you're in a buy and hold and you're a good operator, not a problem. You'll make it through. I got through multiple recessions because my properties were bought, financed, based on cash flow. And I could take some hit on that if I needed to. But with the right properties, there's always someone that's going to move in. Always someone to move in at some price. And some markets are lowering values right now, like Austin, Texas, which was one of the beneficiaries in the tech market of a big blow up over the last few years. Well, they're seeing the drop right now. Just one of many markets, Denver, Boise, Seattle. It's all about affordability. House payment income ratio, very, very interesting to look at this. So look where we were back in 2006. So the ratio of house payment income was at 36%, and that was right before the downturn. Look where we are today, 41%. Do you think there's a problem brewing out there, folks? It's coming, I'm telling you. Banking crisis, you think that's over? Well, Powell and Yellen said it is, or Joe Biden said, we're fine, we're good, don't worry, go back to sleep. It's all good, right? Your money's safe in the bank, of course it is. The big problem too, of course, is technology. One click of a mouse or one app on my phone, my money's gone, right? I mean, you all know you can do that, right? You don't have to go to the bank anymore and say, I'd like to take my money out. Well, they don't have it anyway. They don't have your money in the bank. It's all digital anyway. But that's the problem with the bank runs today is as soon as people get an idea that maybe their money's not safe, they pull it, and it's gone. And that's what's happening right now. So the banking crisis is just, again, one of the symptoms that has occurred. So what are we looking for? Back to the 70s. Back to the 70s. That's why I brought you some clips or talked about the 70s a little bit, because I think we're going to be back at stagflation. Anemic, tepid economy with still inflation running at some at least moderate level going forward. Growth, the big run-ups we've seen, not going to be there. Just don't play that game. Think about a different model. Again, cash flow is what got me out of dental practice. Not having some big flips and some big profits. It was the cash flow. It's the cash flow. It's the cash flow. It's the cash flow. So you don't need to have the big profits like everybody's had in the last number of years to feel like you're. And even when you have those profits, you got to put that money back into something that does what? Produces cash flow. It's all about the income. I'm not against profits. I'm not against that at all. But it's about the income. So when you can have an asset, acquire an asset, operate an asset, invest in an asset that produces sustainable, predictable is the key, cash flow, it doesn't matter what the rest of the market's doing. It doesn't matter. So get out of the game of interest rates and banks. Warren says, what gives you opportunity is other people doing dumb stuff. It's true. It's true. And there's a lot of people doing dumb stuff out there today. So I'm not here to be a vulture. I'm not here to take advantage of people. But folks, somebody has to fix the problem. And the government's not going to do it. They can't do it. So again, this is where you all have the opportunity to dig in and solve a lot of the problems that are coming down the pipeline. Now you just need to position yourself correctly to do that. Again, that's tactical. I'm not going to talk about tactical. We have people in this room that can talk the tactics all day long, and you can figure out where do you plug in based on what you do, who you're connected with, what your market is. That's what you need to figure out, is identify who you are. There's a place for every one of you. At whatever level you want to play, there's a place. You don't have to do it all. You shouldn't do it all. You should figure out how to collaborate with the other right people to make opportunities surface in this marketplace. Creative financing solutions takes me back to Jack Miller days, back to understanding how to make a deal. Bill, you were talking about just earlier, how do you make a deal? Well, it's face-to-face. It's talking to people. It's real life negotiations. It's figuring out what their problem is and understanding how to create financing structures. This is all the stuff that we learned back in the 80s, and it kind of went, but for the wayside, in the last 15 years, it's back big time. So study up with the people here that have the gray hair or the no hair or whatever hair you have. They're the people that can teach you this stuff because they've been through it. They understand how to make this market work. Back to Charlie Munger. Take what the market gives you. Keep that in mind. Take what the market gives you. You can't make the market give you something the market can't give you. So take what the market's giving you today. That's why I'm trying to give you some ideas what the market's going to look like, what it is today, where it's going. Don't try to overplay the market for what it can't give you. Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Okay, I want to talk just very briefly on due diligence. So whether you are raising capital because you take investor money, individual deals, funds, syndications, or you're more like me, I'm an investor in funds or syndications much of the time, we hear the word due diligence bandied around all the time, don't we? Yeah, all the time. And it's a very important word. What we've been looking at in Freedom Founders, because we don't do any kind of full underwriting, full due diligence, we can't. But we educate our members, our docs, on what they need to understand about what is due diligence. So there's three components. There's what I call the structural and legal, the documents. You have a deal, you've agreed on the terms, and someone like a Jeff Watson will actually take it because he knows what he's doing and can put the deal in terms that have legal and structural components that everybody can understand and will give you whatever safety or whatever control features that you want if you're the one bringing the capital. Funds and syndications, more complicated. Again, that's where you need somebody to look at those and make sure that what you're being told you're getting by investing in a fund or syndication is really what you're getting, because the documents, as you know, are many, many pages, and a lot of the specificity is in the fine print, within the boilerplate. It's important to understand that. Why more so today than ever before? Well, in the past, the market took care of everything. Everything worked out. The headwinds right now are causing a lot of upheaval. I get to see this from a high level. I'm plugged into a lot of things. I'm seeing this right now where situations are coming up where this kind of due diligence was not done. People didn't understand, and the paperwork was not done well. It was ambiguous, or maybe it was purposely written to give advantages to the fund manager or syndicator, leaving the LPs, limited partners, out where they have no control at all. This is a time where I tell our people, you need to be asking the questions. Yeah, in the past, I know you're kind of reticent, to ask somebody who's had a great track record the last 15 years. You don't want to ask those tough questions. No, you need to ask the tough questions, if ever, more so today than ever before. Economic pro forma. Oh, everybody's got a pro forma, don't they? Everybody's got a pro forma. Based on what? History, rearview mirror, right? So pro formas are going to talk about, IRR, right? Internal rate of return, multiples on exit, in so many years. I mean, you have to understand that you've got to look and develop your own pro forma, or do it with people who have experience. What I'm saying is, we're all going to oversell our stuff if we believe in it. We're all going to do it. I would do it too. I love my stuff. I'm really good at doing this. And in the past, we've gotten 70% IRR. So we're going to continue to get that. Well, are you so sure, David? No, I couldn't be sure of that at all. What can I promise? Well, lower the expectations. Oh, yeah, but I'm not going to raise any capital. Everybody wants, the big. I'm just telling you, sophisticated investors today get it. They understand if you're still selling the pro formas up here, you probably don't know what you're talking about. So if you really want to raise capital from the right people, bring your expectations down. Always underpromise and overdeliver. Bring them down, bring them down. If you're telling me you can still get XYZ in equity syndications today, I'm telling you, you're blowing smoke. Because you're not. You're not. As I said, it's going to be a longer term hold period. Deals that used to flip out in 18 to 30 to 36 months, no, not going to happen. We're in the long game now. So put your money in, operate the long game, get the cash flow returns down here at your 8, 9, 10%, and someday down the road, maybe it makes sense to sell that property. But what's wrong with holding a good asset that just produces income? Right? Yeah, everybody's about the flipping thing, so got to get over that. Okay, this next one is the one that nobody, including yours truly, really has done any looking at financial accountability. What are the internal financial controls of the person, the individual, if they're running, if they're maybe running turnkey properties or back to funds and syndications, what are their internal controls? Unfortunately, I'm on the forefront of several situations, people that raised millions of dollars over the last 10, 11, 12 years, and at best, mismanagement of funds, at worst, flat out Ponzi's. And it's there, unfortunately. It's there. So either side's not good for me as an investor. Mismanagement, not good. Ponzi, malfeasance, not good. Either way, how do you know? That's a hard one because I'm not a financial, I mean, I appreciate numbers, but I got to have someone who's like forensically can go in and tell me, what do you see? I mean, and so it's hard to do, but I'm just telling you that you need to be asking the tougher questions today about who you're investing with. Do they restrict their accounts? Or do they have one account where all the money's come in? New investor money, rehab money, return money, and it's all just commingled in one big account. That's not a good day. That's not a good day. Well, if you're selling securities, I mean, that's big trouble. So just don't do it there. But just in terms of being someone who is capable and should be taking investor capital, you've got to do better. So we love to talk about making money with other people's money, right? I mean, that is how you in a market that's growing, that is how you grow wealth. Arbitrage, leverage, yeah, I mean, it is. But the market's different now. I'm not saying you can't use it. I'm just saying you've got to be more prudent about how you do it. If you're taking investor money, I just mentioned, mismanagement to malfeasance, not good. The exuberance of an irrational market, your absolute responsibility is to make sure that you have the professional financial accounting books that you could prove up with a click of a mouse. My good friend and CPA, John Groom, of 4 decades, told me years ago, and I don't take investor money. The only investor money I've taken is on individual private transactions on single-family houses. I've never syndicated, I don't run funds. But John Groom told me back in the day, he said, David, you can run your own books for your own personal portfolio any way you want to. Well, he said, don't give me bad books. I mean, I have to do your taxes. But he said, it's on you, right? You run it the way you want to. It's okay. But the moment you take outside investor money, you just set a bar for a new standard. And that standard is you better be able to, with a click of a mouse, pull up financials that someone could look at and say, I get it. I see it. And if you can't do that, you have no business taking anybody's money. Bill? Yeah. Nope. Directly to the operator. Yep. Yep. You mean how do I deal with Well, with the people I get to talk to, I mean, here, obviously in Freedom Founders, I've got a lot of accredited, hardworking doctors who want to we all want to trust people. We want to trust people. It's our nature to want to trust people. And so we don't ask the question. So it's education. It's just doing what I'm doing here. I'm going through, and we are doing a lot of work now, on due diligence. What does that mean, and how to get those, get the answers to that. Yeah, I've got doctors who, they just want to come in, just like you said, just take this money. I heard you're good. Not asking question number one. You've got to do that. And so I think just educating the people that you're working with, same thing, if they've got passive money, it's like, have them ask the right questions. Before Tom Berry takes money, Wendy, I know that you have conversations with your investors, do you not? Even if they're not asking the right questions, I know you all have filters in place to make sure that it's even applicable for them to do what they're doing. It's not necessarily your responsibility, but I know you feel it like I do. I don't take money from anybody, but I'm a connector, and so as a connector, I feel an obligation to do everything I can within our tribe to speak to what I know needs to be done. And so you just have to get out in front of this and talk about this. People don't like to talk about this. It's just like, let's just put our money in and let it run. But you've got to talk about this now. If you talk about this, and speak to it, then people like me are going to say, tell me more, because I might want to do business with you. But if you're a commodity out there, just give me money, and you're not talking about these items, then for me, I was like, don't know anything bad about you, but I'm just staying away. You're not speaking my language. So speak the language of the concerns and uncertainty that a lot of passive investors have today. If you speak to that out on front, don't let that elephant sit back there, don't untouched. You've got to speak to it. You do that, you're clear, you show them what they should be asking, they can become a really good investor with you. Differentiate yourself is what I'm saying. Don't be a commodity. That's what we're doing, Bill. Wealth creation versus wealth preservation. So when I was younger, I was all about creating more wealth, right, as we normally do. And I'm not saying I'm against creating wealth today, but it's back to your young lady who said, how much is enough? When you get to a point in life where enough's enough, then I'm more about preservation, preserving it, right? I don't need to hit the high numbers. It's just like I want to keep it, working well. I don't necessarily want to be the one to work it all, but again, that's where I have to have the prudence to find good people to invest through that I feel like are, the right jockey on the horse to carry my money. And again, that goes back to due diligence. Equity versus debt, not going to go into that today, but determining where we are on the capital stack. Today, I lean more towards debt as an asset than equities. Nothing wrong with equities. You got equities that are performing well for you operationally, no problem. When people come to me with syndications today, I turn kind of a askance. Yeah, well, why? Why? Why is right now the right time to, because I see values coming down. So you're gonna have to show me like a really strong reason why that equity deal makes sense. Now, I know my friend Tom Berry, got out of equities like way early, but it's better to be early than late. Like 8 years ago, you exited most of your equities and you've been on the debt lending side. And now you're watching the market turn and now you're looking back over towards equities. I mean, there's a balance. I mean, you need to always think about shifting your capital based on what the market's doing. You never just go all in one thing. It's shifting your capital, understanding the kind of dance between equities and debt. Notes, performing notes, right? I've sold a lot of properties over the years and carry back financing. It's good income. Could I sell for cash? Yeah, I could sell for cash, but maybe I like the income. I can always do something with that income stream. I don't have to hold it forever. I can sell it off. I can sell part of it off. You just keep your options open, but I want to balance my portfolio based on the economic situation that's going on in the market because I see the headwinds coming. So I want to kind of move my allocations as I saw this coming over the last couple of years. The more capital at risk, the more difficult to attain higher yields on that capital. The corollary is the less capital you have to invest, meaning you're probably very active, you can actually make some very nice returns because you can be very involved in those deals. Make sense? So don't think you have to have all the capital in the world to make some headway in this market. If you're a boots on the ground, you're willing to get out there, knock on doors, and talk to people. Yeah, you can make a lot of wealth in this market. All right, I'm about to finish up here. Let me go
It's
back.
going to be-
Whoa, wait. Okay, this just came out March 2023. Study said most Americans doubt their children will be better off. I'm not going to ask you. I'm hoping that we're going to do a better job for our kids and help them get through this. But the sentiment in the country today is not very good from a lot of respects, right? And this was an article, I think it was actually out of the Wall Street Journal. Yeah, it was Wall Street Journal. That came out back in March. And so I'm going to have, I just brought Charlie here just to speak to you today. So let's let Charlie speak.
It's going to be way harder for the group that's graduating from college now, for them to get rich and stay rich and so forth. It's going to be way harder for them than it was for my generation. Think what it costs to own a house in a desirable neighborhood in a city like Los Angeles. I think we'll probably end up with higher income taxes too and so on. No, I think the investment world is plenty hard, and I don't think in my lifetime, 98 years, it was the ideal time to own a diversified portfolio of common stocks that updated a little by adding the new ones that came in, like the Apples and the Alphabets and so forth. And I'd say that people got maybe 10 or 11% if you did that very intelligently before inflation, and maybe 9% after inflation. That was a marvelous return. No other generation in the history of the world ever got returns like that. And I don't think the future is going to give the guy graduating from college this year nearly that easy an investment opportunity. I think it's going to be way harder.
I think that's the way it's going to be. Harder, but still very possible. So, this article came out, again, just this spring. Wall Street Journal, more students are turning away from college and towards apprenticeships. I got a little bit ahead of them. In 2019, I published this book. So Wall Street Journal's catching up, right? Good for them. I'm a big believer in apprenticeships. I am not against education, but the right education. I mean, why is a kid going to school today and taking on all that debt if they don't really know, and most kids really don't know? So why not apprentice with somebody, some entrepreneur, some business owner that you know within your circle of influence? If my kid was of that age right now, she would not be going to college. I would set her up. I'd send her to Richmond to hang out with Jim and Cheryl, or where they can really see the world for what it is, and then decide. Okay, you need more education to go to this or that. Fine, perfect. But just letting kids go off into college and thinking that we need to be putting them through school, I think is a bad model today. That's just me. So the apprentice model was written for kids and parents to understand how that might work. At our events, Freedom Founders, we always invite what we call the next gen, 18 to 30-year-olds, the kids of our members, to come. Particularly in June, our summer meeting, when their schedule's more open. And so we started doing this a couple years ago. This was, I think, last June when we had them. And it's so fun to see these kids light up because they're seeing the world from a different perspective than the rest of the world, which is all doom and gloom and, coming out of school with all this debt and I can't get a job and I can't, it's just, these kids are seeing it totally differently. We do special breakouts for them. They are with our main meeting, but then we have special breakouts where we can speak just to them and let them have conversations with appointed people to talk about their life, what they want to do. And you're even away from their parents. So they can actually speak their mind and not feel like their mom or dad's like listening to everything they're talking about. Well, we do record it, but no, we don't. And then I was appointed with Ron DeSantis' Florida advocacy group for increasing financial literacy in the high school education. So I'm working with that group right now to help do that. And it's fun. I enjoy it because I'm not a guy that enjoys bureaucracy. I've gotten enough of that to see what that looks like. It's messy. But again, if they're trying to do something constructive for kids and give them some financial literacy, some good financial literacy before they get out of school, it's very, very important. And in very few states, it's probably less than a third of the states have anything at all. It's really, really bad, right? I mean, I don't even want to talk about what they're teaching the kids today. I mean, it's just disgusting. Not getting any education. So that's a big deal for me. Is again giving back and trying to help the next generation because they're going to need a lot of help. Quick ask from you. We have within our tribe a number of properties that need new management. I've got a bunch in Texas. We got that covered. But, and I mentioned Toledo, Akron, and Cleveland, but also in the Carolinas and down in Georgia, and I've just put a heat map up there on the East Coast. Any of you that are active in any of those markets want to contact me and let me know if you're someone who has access to property management, securing properties. This is a fund that went bad, and so now properties need to be reset, remanaged. So anybody has any that, let me know, or you can put it in the real estate group, you can post it there or something, send it to Jim. Yeah, that's my only ask today. I'm about done here. These books, now there's a lot of great books to read, but these are some books if you want to understand more about what I'm looking at from a 40,000 foot level. The Fourth Turning, Neil Howe and Strauss wrote that book back in '95, talking about these secular trends, the 40 years trends. Neil Howe's updated book comes out next month. It's called The Fourth Turning is Here. What he's talking about is we are in this volatile period with a lot of disruption, probably going to last into the early next decade. So what I've been saying to you ties in with what a lot of other people say from a high level, a lot of volatility, a lot of disruption, no stability. George Friedman, another great author, The Next 100 Years. It's a great book. You want to read about fossil fuels? Alec Epstein is great. You want to talk about climate change? Steve Kuden, that's a great book. And Peter Zion, when you want to understand where we sit in the world as a former superpower and what that means to the world, to us here, but also to the rest of the world. Just some great books if you're nerdy like me and like to read that stuff. All right, I'm going to leave you with this from David McElvaney. Herein we begin to see the great blessing of disturbance. It is a window to those issues that must be addressed to make us men and women of greater confidence and ability. Those who survive disturbance become the visionaries and the entrepreneurs and legacy builders of the next generation. That, my friends, is what this is all about. Thank you very much. We're good?
Got a standing ovation.
Wow.
About that.